Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to follow up the video I did yesterday where I was eating some mangoes and avocados. Wasn't able to record the last few minutes, ran out of memory, and I wanted to make sure I conveyed those points across because I think they're pretty important, because a lot of people are really confused about how much fat they can eat, and there's a lot of diets out there that are pushing nothing but fat. Makes you wonder how can this work? Well, I'm going to try to make some sense out of that today in this video. But first I want to make sure I finalized my video yesterday where I was going to eat 6 mangoes, one wasn't edible, and then 2 avocados, and they were all about the same amount of calories, 187 for the mangoes, 189 for the avocados. Together, if all 6 were edible, that would have been right at 1,500 calories. Now, what was interesting about this is that little 4-ounce avocado had 2 calories more than the 10-ounce mango, and of course I'm referring to the weight after the peel and seeds are gone. That mango might have weighed 16 to 15 ounces, depending upon the thickness of the skin, and that avocado, again, depending upon the thickness of the skin, maybe 6.5, 7 possibly. But we ended up with 4 ounces of edible avocados and 10 ounces of mangoes and about the same amount of calories, except you're getting about 25% more protein with the avocados. A whole lot more fat, but we don't want to be afraid of fat. Now, does this cause a digestive problem? Not if eaten in the right sequence, which is one of the things I wanted to make sure to drive home yesterday. And meaning that you don't eat the mango, then the avocado, then the mango, then the avocado, then the mango, and the avocado. Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. No, can't do that. You got to make sure you eat the rabbits first, the things that are going to be digested quickly and out the system quicker, fastest, the first. Then you can eat the slower foods afterwards. So as long as you eat the mangoes first, the avocados afterwards in a separate meal, that's fine. And if you're trying to get the calories, now for me, I went for a long bike ride yesterday. I burned mostly fat, not carbohydrates. So when I refueled my fuel tank, I could afford to add a few extra fats in there without eating too much fat. Now we only need about 1 or 2% fat in our diet, so when it really comes right down to it, a lot of people are so confused about nutrition, they say there is no essential need for carbohydrates. That's poppycock. Your essential need for carbohydrates is way higher than your essential need for fat. We only need about 1 or 2% of our diet to come from essential fatty acids we can't get anywhere else. However, when it comes to the carbohydrates, 40 to 70% of our diet should be made up of carbohydrates. The only problem is it's a complicated process to figure out what each person's needs are on an individual level from day to day. But I spent over 1,500 hours working on this in a 15-month period of time. I was exercising 7 to 8 hours a day, eating 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories a day. I figured out how to match the calories in and calories out. I kept track of my carbohydrate fuel tank. I understand how it goes up and down, how it can be depleted, how it overfills, how it's supposed to work. And you realize that's how we're designed. The food we're supposed to eat is high in carbohydrates. And I remember when I was doing this, I was very low fat back then, only about 5%. I wouldn't touch an avocado. I was afraid of them. Ridiculous. But what I ended up doing is, even though I was consistently eating about 1,000 calories less every day than I needed, I was consuming not quite twice as many carbohydrates as I needed. Right at 175% is what it was. I know it because I kept track of all that stuff. I was spending 2 to 4 hours going through the calculations every day, and I know take, keep, I touch, I can whip through those numbers. So I spent a lot of time analyzing this. I really do understand it. Most people don't understand it. They don't think we have a need for carbohydrates. My God, carbohydrates are so essential you don't give it to your body's going to eat itself unless you eat some other dead flesh to keep it from eating your own flesh. And that's dangerous. We can't do that. We don't want to do that. We know that's not a healthy diet. Now, what's interesting about how much fat we should eat and how much we can get away with, there is a relationship to how much fat we should limit if we're trying to lose weight. A lot of people don't understand this piece of the puzzle, so they make blanket statements that you can't do. If you're really trying to lose weight the conventional method, where you're losing somewhere between 500 to 1,000 calories a day, therefore theoretically you lose 1 pound to 2 pounds of fat a week. If you're not consuming a low-fat diet, if you don't choose food selection over portion control, you're going to end up losing muscle mass unless you eat a whole bunch of dead animal flesh so you don't eat your own flesh. That's how essential carbohydrates are. We can get them from excess protein, but we don't want to do that. That's dangerous. not the way to give our body what it needs. So let's take a look at what we need. 60% of the calories we burn at rest is fat. So if you're a couch potato and you do nothing at all, you could theoretically 60% fat in your diet, and the other, if it's good carbohydrates, you'll get all the carbohydrates you need. But you don't have to consume that much fat. You could consume 20% fat, and then all the other calories you're going to be getting from the carbohydrates, you're going to be consuming more carbohydrates than you can store, so the excess will then be turned to fat. That's where we should be getting most of our fat. As I mentioned moments ago, I was consuming 175% of the carbohydrates I needed, so 75% of those was then being converted to fat at a rate of using about 30% energy to digest it, convert it. Don't want that kind of complicates things, doesn't it? But it doesn't matter. The point here I'm trying to make here is that we only need 1 or 2% fat in our diet, but look, we could be burning up to 60%. Now, if you're really active, you could be burning 70% of your calories as carbohydrates instead of only 40 if you're a couch potato. In that case, you need to replenish your fuel tank. Now, the point I'm making here, is that if we reduce our caloric intake by like 1,000 calories, then we also have to make sure we keep that carbohydrate fuel tank full, which means that fat fuel tank might have to be at 10%. So you can't make blanket statements. Some people, to lose weight successfully based on the amount of calories they're consuming, they've got to keep the fat down to a certain level. It could not be as high as 30%, maybe. You can't even do it on the level you're eating because you're not eating enough carbs. If you don't eat enough carbs, your body will kick in gluconeogenesis, and that's when it goes after your own tissues, unless you're foolish enough to eat a whole bunch of other dead animal flesh and use that instead. Well, that sounds like a good idea instead of using my own flesh, but that's just going to compound the problem because the animal flesh is what gets us in trouble. Damages the kidneys. Kidneys don't filter the lymph system, the sewage system, our bathroom. It backs up. That's the disease process. Doctors don't study that, so they're totally clueless. Most people don't understand how that carbohydrate fuel tank goes up and down. I understand it better probably than anyone on this planet because I analyze it every day for 15 months. And I can still visually analyze it because I've done it so much. Every time I eat, I know where my fuel tank is and what I'm putting in. So what is your essential need? Well, it all varies. It all depends. But if you are going to go on a really low-calorie diet, then you do have to keep the fat intake down low. But if you're on a maintenance diet, if you're not eating less calories than you need, then theoretically you can probably eat 40% fat and still get enough carbohydrates. But the problem with eating fats is many times they're not nutrient dense. So the issue now is, are you still getting all your micronutrients? Well, that's possible. We can still get all our micronutrients and still add a lot of fat. So if I'm really active and I know I'm already getting my base calories of micronutrients, I'm not concerned if I eat 2 avocados instead of 2 mangoes because I'm looking at 8 ounces versus 20 ounces. Plus, those avocados will keep you full longer. As long as you layer them the right way. Remember, you don't put the turtles in with the rabbits. You'll create a traffic jam down there. Now, you do have to be careful about avocados. Sometimes they can kind of go through with a very sticky consistency. And that can plug you up, believe it or not, if you eat too many of them. So you got to be careful with those. But the main concern I think most people have is a lot of misinformation out there that's based on studies that's all based on cooked fat. There's not that many raw food fat studies. They've done some recently on nuts and seeds. But otherwise, when you look at some people who promote these low fat diets, it's all based on look at the damage the fats are doing, but they're the bad fats. If they're raw fats, it's a whole different ball game. So I'm not a real big advocate of a 10% fat diet for a lot of people. I think a lot of people can get away with it. I did a 5% fat diet for quite a few years. I lived to survive it, but who knows what type of damage I might have seen long term. Now, if we're living in a toxic environment like I do here in Houston, that extra fat really does help. And again, we don't want to be afraid of fat. We want to be afraid of fire. When we cook our fats, that's how we end up with oxidized cholesterol. And these problems are easily avoidable if we can learn to change our diet. So, how much fat is safe? Well, if you're losing weight, you got to keep the fat down. That's really important. Otherwise, I don't see with a 20-30% level. I think going any higher than that might be questionable. Now there are some people, due to adrenal fatigue, they might have to tweak and modify their diet, their raw food diet and approach for a while. A lot of people do this and they're successful with it to an extent, because it will keep from stressing the adrenals. And as long as you understand what your carbohydrate needs are, you can make up for those by drinking vegetable juice if you're having trouble with the fruit or other blood sugar issues because of your adrenals. So this is how it can get complicated. Why do some people not do well on a raw plant-based diet? And why do some do so well? Well, a lot of them do well because their liver is damaged and they can't process fat. So hallelujah to that. But you'll find those same people, if they address the liver issues that they're having, down the road they can incorporate fat without the issues. So what's a safe amount? I average around 20-25% fat. I could go a whole day without eating and not be concerned. Obviously you don't want to do that over and over and over, because we do have about a 1 or 2% need for fat. What's the best thing to eat to get those special essential fatty acids? Your leafy greens. If you consume 2 pounds of leafy greens every day, I guarantee you, these things are about 12% fat. You're going to get all the fat you need. One of the best ways to do it is to drink your vegetable juices and then eat your fruit. And if you like salads, go ahead and partake in a salad. I love big salads. I make big 5-pound man salads when I'm really hungry. But it's so much easier just to drink the juice, and boy, the system really does like it. I'm convinced that the length of your life is going to depend a lot on how you use your body. Some things you don't want to not use them. You got to move your body, right? You don't move your body, you know, you're going to fall apart. You're going to, you know, you got to make sure you know all your range of motions, and you twist and you move, you play, you have fun. But there's some parts of our body we don't want to overwork, like the liver. The body wants simple, it doesn't want complex. It wants amino acids, it doesn't want protein. It wants simple sugars in fruit, it doesn't want complex sugars, starches in cooked starchy foods. It wants simple. We don't want to overwork the liver. And it's not a bad idea not to overwork our whole system. That's why I love the idea of adding a little bit of vegetable juice in what you're doing. And why? You know why, my friends. It's a treat.